Hi, Evan. Welcome. Thanks so
Um,
much for joining us today. We're really happy to have the chance to talk with you about the Longer You Bleed.
Thank you for having me.
So it's such a powerful documentary. It doesn't just show the physical side of war, but really dives into how people keep going emotionally and mentally in the middle of all that chaos. And what really struck us was how honest and human the film feels. It shows pain, but also humor, strength, and the small moments that help people survive. So we would love to start by talking a bit about the people you filmed and how their experiences shaped the story you wanted to tell.
Sure. So, like the protagonist of the film is my partner, Luba. So it and all the other people, well, pretty much all the other people are her friends and connections and people from a direct community. So it's very, the film emerged from a very organic place. It's very much a reflection of like the social circles that we were in and of course, I'm not Ukrainian. This wasn't like initially my experience. It's one which more so became my experience, but it was, very much a reflection of the personal experiences that we were kind of collectively engrossed in. So, the film that exists now isn't the film that we planned to make. We really just at the start of the full scale invasion, well, months later rather. Um, well, me in particular, I just wanted to make use my kind of ability in film. Like I had time, I had energy. I owned my own equipment, and I lived in one of the closest major cities that refugees were flowing into. And so, yeah, we just decided we wanted to use the opportunity that we had to access people to tell people's stories. Basically, we had a bunch of people around us who were talking about these unique experiences and sort of awful side effects of the war, and ones which we felt weren't being talked about. So we felt that this could be documented, and since we had the opportunity to do this, we felt a sense of accountability that we should be doing this. So initially, we just started recording interviews with Luba and her friends, and talking about because we were sure that there was something unique or some elements that were unique about this experience that weren't being talked about, which perhaps should be. And so the research, the development, the production process all kind of flowed into one. Like some of the interviews you see in the film are kind of our research interviews that we initially did to talk about like what is this experience like. And so most of the interviews we didn't use because we talked about a number of things from bureaucracy to integration to misinformation. But it was just this theme of desensitization of images and social media, which didn't just, we chose it as the core theme of the film because it was something which consistently came up. But also, of course, it's one that lends itself to cinematic and visual storytelling. And so when we kind of made that decision at a certain point quite early on that this was going to be the theme of the film, then the process of the further interviews that we did would focus on that. But still, even then, everything kind of the characters that we spoke to and that they continued like within just the reflection of our social circles.
Yeah, yeah. So the film doesn't only document war, it captures the inner transformation of people forced to live through it. So my question is, during the production, did you notice how people's sense of identity or humanity changed over time?
Um, Good question. I mean, in the timeline of making the film, I'm not sure we directly noticed because the actual production process. We weren't. It wasn't like every character we returned to consistently over a consistent period of time, of which we could like necessarily like map that out. But as through the interviews and talking to people like really in depth on this topic, we learned that yeah, people really did have like an inner transformation as a result of these experiences. Like when the war begins, you're filled with a kind of well, and it's just me. I don't want to speak for these people, but uh, this is what we consistently heard that then when the war happened, people were filled with a lot of energy and a mix of emotions like just anger, frustration, a sense of unity to a degree, but like a lot of kind of energy and crucially like a lot of emotion. But as time goes on and just this reality, it not only continues, but some days gets worse, and you're just constantly just learning about the most awful aspects of human nature. Attacks on maternity hospitals, kindergartens, executions, and I could just go on and get even worse than that. And when you just continually hear about these things every day, and of course, it's going to grind on your humanity. Like we don't have a huge capacity to receive and process all of the information that these infrastructures have the capacity to give us. And so, yeah, of course, people consistently talk about how they become emotionally numb after just this going on day in and day out, and just this fear and anxiety of your friends who are fighting, your family. Yeah, it of course changes you. It makes you extremely desensitized when you do hear about new things. And I think that creates a whole feedback loop of further tragic inner transformation where, you notice how little you perhaps care about seeing, a hospital bombed in your city, and you see it and you don't even think about it. And then like that gives you a further level of self-reflection, like who am I? Where has my humanity gone? And so yeah, it's a very awful feedback loop, which I wouldn't wish on anyone.
I have a question in relation to the production and this ability to express oneself, the trauma, the emotions. I noticed that in the interviews, the subjects speak English, which is obviously not their native language. I was wondering what was the reason behind this choice, and do you think speaking in a non-native language affected how your subjects express their emotions and traumas?
Yeah, that's a huge question. Like, I mean, the probably obvious answer is just universality. When English is the language which is the most universal, so it made sense to choose that. But of course, like if it's not someone's native language, maybe they're not able to express things as fluidly and as clearly and as accurately. I think this is a question that we've been discussing recently because of our new film. We're also shooting in Ukraine, and we were doing some interviews a couple of weeks ago in Kiev, and like doing some of them in Ukrainian and trying to do as much of them in English. But understandably, people just want to speak in their native language. And the one of the I don't know. It's a difficult question because, of course, speaking like very pragmatically, like distributors and broadcasters, they might be much more likely to broadcast your work and broadcast the relevant story if it's like in English language. However, even if people are reading in subtitles, if what they're reading is a much more well-rounded and fluent and accurate expression of the certain idea or emotion, then perhaps that's better. So yeah, like as I say, we chose it just for the obvious question of universality, but it's not an easy choice really when you're talking about representing people's complex emotions or feelings.
For me personally, in my viewing experience, this decision to have your subject speak in English, it kind of helped me to feel and empathize with them more because the sometimes they struggle to express all these emotions and traumas. And for me, the struggle for expression is really something that helped me kind of empathize with them and kind of understand the hardship of even talking about these things. So in a way, for me, it was a plus or a decision that helped the documentary have more effect on me personally.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
So the documentary seems to argue that empathy is not just an emotion, but also a moral responsibility. It invites viewers to imagine themselves in the victim's place. What role do you think empathy should play in filmmaking today, especially when representing human suffering in a world saturated with real-time images of violence?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? Um, what was the end of that question? What role does empathy play in cinema today?
Yeah, like especially when representing human suffering in a world saturated with real-time images of violence.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like, empathy, I think, has always been a crucial element of cinema. But yeah, you do obviously make the point that today is very different. Like the landscape of media and the information spaces are so just filled and saturated and such so that yeah, you just have to like think of new and different ways to create and express stories in media. I'm not sure I would say that empathy has a different role in that. I think its role is consistent. It's a kind of essential facet to yeah to telling stories about social issues and human rights. Um, uh, yeah, I think aside from empathy, I think there's a lot of other weight on like the burden on the shoulders of media producers about how to get stories noticed in the saturated media landscape, and that's like such a difficult question and thing to do now, because it's just every platform and is evolving so quickly, and people are caring less and less, or the capacity of their caring is just like so evenly distributed over many things. So um, it's a very difficult one.
My next question connects to human rights. I think you have partially answered it already, but the Declaration of Human Rights emphasizes dignity, freedom, and security. Uh, for me, your film was a reminder that these things can be fragile and in times of war and crisis. In your opinion, how can filmmaking help protect or at least draw attention to the fragile state of human rights in times of crisis?
I mean, my answer is kind of in your question. Like, filmmaking can draw attention to that which is overlooked. Like, I mean, I suppose the example that I would cite with our film is that these like media corporations, which have suddenly in the past few years just completely dominated the way we like think and feel and consume information, in a way which is like completely unchecked and unregulated. And I'm not saying it should be like government regulated social media. I'm not saying that at all. But like to your point, I think the value of mediums like filmmaking and sort of open democratic mediums of expression are essential in broadcasting whatever flaws or negative side effects these, as I say in this instance, like media corporations and platforms have, such that conversations and can progress to the point that like we can all kind of understand what is going wrong with these like unchecked and unregulated infrastructures, and hopefully that kind of collective feeling can translate into a meaningful action which can offset whatever negatives are created.
I mean, connecting to your answer, like you mentioned, like these corporations taking over the narrative completely without regard to people. Like in the documentary, for me, one of the most striking moments was like the montages of these Instagram yearly recaps, which are supposed to show you moments of happiness, of I don't know, vacations, dates, and all this I don't know, joy of consuming, and all of a sudden for the refugees it became a reminder of the violence and the destruction of their country, of their homes. So I think also this illustrates perfect your point.
Thank you.
So social media plays a complex role in the film, spreading both awareness and trauma. The constant exposure to violent imagery seems to deepen the psychological wounds rather than heal them. So, how do you see the impact of digital platforms on our collective understanding of war and truth?
Um, I think the ubiquity of not just images but information and storytelling on social media just creates such a distance from reality. I think it abstracts political events. Just the way things are made into memes and content. I think just creates a distance from those what's actually happening. And I think that's something which leads to just you caring less in a way. And obviously that's extremely problematic because if everyone just stops caring about something, then it stops getting as much attention or whatever support or aid it needs. And yeah, I mean, there's on the element of the question about war, I think that's also like complicated in a different way. Um, yeah. So I'm not like that. That's something which I'm supposed not too confident to even question about because there's so many facets to that side of the question.
Um, I mean, focusing more on like not the observers of the Ukrainian war, like, but the ones who were involved in it or became refugees because of it. Like, for them, what the documentary showed me is that social media made the war inescapable and constant in on their phones, on their everyday social media feeds. So my question is based on what you witnessed during production. Do you think that is ever truly possible to leave the war behind if you are a refugee or live like a life that is free from this war if you have already managed to escape it in the physical?
I mean, I'm not like a displaced person. I'm not someone who's escaped from a war, so I couldn't claim to speak to whatever that emotional reality is and whether you can let go of it or not. But through the production of the film, this question of like how to actually, this question of like how to be at peace with this reality or live a normal life whilst you're drowning in this information. Obviously, this is one we contended with consistently. One of the characters in the film, and a perhaps like temporary solution, or maybe this is a permanent solution for some people, is to completely withdraw from social media. I think she deleted Instagram for like 2 or 3 months, and she said it helped her a lot. Like she was able to really get back to a normal daily routine, and to just like be a bit more present in the moment of what's happening around her, in her neighborhood, going for walks, whatever it might be, rather than kind of living in this sort of haunting liminal space, like halfway between Berlin and Ukraine. Just because of this like digital well, it's not a digital reality, it's a real reality, but just like you only experience it in the digital space. At the same time though, like I think a lot of I talk about Ukrainians, but I think this is generally just people who are displaced or people who have a connection to a war or crisis, I think it's very difficult to withdraw, understandably so, because like when you're not in directly in your country, like one of the few things that you can do to help is raise awareness or use your media platform or following whatever to channel into like fundraising or donation infrastructures. That's a huge thing. And so even though like these and that's just like one of the very few things you can do. And even though it's yeah, when you're like in a different country. And so even though it's perhaps like re-traumatizing to constantly be meditating on and being drowned by this like traumatic realities, I think to withdraw and to let go, and to try and like live on as if and move forward away from the war. Like I think there's a different sort of gravity to looking away, which perhaps maybe prevents people from ever really being able to let go. And I think that's and yeah, unimaginably difficult thing to do. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer to that. People should do what's healthy for them. But I think it's yeah, as I say, difficult experience to have.
So your film highlights how civilians continue their daily routines amid chaos as a quiet act of defiance. Do you believe that this kind of normalcy can be seen as a human right, the right to live with dignity even in war?
Yeah, I agree. I think to to not let like an oppressive invasion or bombardment um, disrupt your life, that's certainly a powerful act of defiance and protest. I saw a great film last night, going off topic, Songs of Slow Burning Earth at the Ukrainian Film Festival here in Berlin. And it was an incredible representation of that. I highly recommend that film.
Okay, thank you. Um, so history, okay, that can be a hard one. So history shows that those in power often decide the fate of ordinary people, while the powerless bear the cost. So after documenting such resilience and pain, what gives you hope about humanity's ability to resist both war and indifference?
Yeah, you're dropping big political, philosophical questions on me. Um, could you repeat the end of that question, please?
So, like after documenting such resilience and pain, what gives you hope about humanity's ability to resist both war and indifference?
Well, simply just witnessing it take place, witnessing people of a country experience the worst hellish reality you can imagine, unspeakable things, massacres, and just yeah, as I say, you can just list the atrocities that are taking place, and yet still just continuing on with their lives, continuing on with their day-to-days, relationships, friends, fighting for their country. I think not just enduring, but thriving and pushing on in the face of such atrocity. Um, is that's why I would have hope for it because I've seen it.
Mhm.
Um, in the end, the longer you bleed doesn't offer clear answers, but rather leave space for reflection and in a way it kind of reflects your like takeaway. I felt like at the end of the documentary, like there are no clear answers even for the ones making this film. My question is, what do you hope the audience will carry with them after watching it? An emotion, a question, or maybe a call to action?
Yeah, we don't have clear answers right now. Like the what I feel like is this conversation around desensitization and emotional numbness and the kind of role that media and social media plays in that. is really in its infancy. The reason we made the film on this topic is because there was no films on this topic. I still don't. I mean, I'm sure there's a film somewhere on this topic, but I looked and I couldn't find any. And I felt, but at the same time, everyone around me was talking about these things, talking about desensitization, not with Ukraine, but also Gaza and other wars. And so, yeah, like we're at the really early stages of these conversations, and I think because of that, that's why we don't have clear answers. I think what I would like people to take away is a kind of renewed motivation to continue talking about this, to continue thinking about this topic and discussing it more, so that smarter people than us can progress the conversation, investigate it more, and maybe through further conversation we can kind of understand how to navigate this media landscape without falling into this trap of dehumanizing ourselves and others, and being desensitized in a way that destroys our emotions. So I just hope people keep talking about it.
Thank you. And before we leave, you mentioned your next project is also about the war in Ukraine. Can you tell us a bit more about your project if you feel like it?
Yeah, sure, sure. Um, so we're looking at the exploration of psychedelic assisted therapies in Ukraine. So like psychedelic assisted therapies, for those that don't know, is like a broad category that encompasses like psilocybin, MDMA, ketamine, LSD, and they're used in conjunction with psychotherapy in a broader process to heal a lot of mental illness and mental health conditions, and they can be profoundly effective. They're not magic, but they have been found to be far more effective than a lot of traditional psychiatric treatments. And so people are exploring them in Ukraine, and kind of innovating them to work on a mass scale. And so we're kind of documenting that, but what we're documenting it as is in connection and in conversation with the broader context. Ukraine being a post-Soviet country which has extremely strict drug policies, like this kind of Soviet era attitudes towards mental health, drugs, a politicization and weaponization historically of psychiatry, and yet they're trying to do extremely controversial. The researchers involved are coming up against all of this backdrop to do this like kind of very innovative and controversial work, which shouldn't be controversial, but it is. And so, yeah, it's revolutionary mental health care work in the kind of eye of the storm of a generational war. I think, like, I do feel strongly that Ukraine is going to emerge from this war as a world leader in trauma care, purely because they're forced to. And so we're kind of documenting that process at the origins. And just a final layer to it is looking through the historical lens at the kind of additional urgency in the context of Ukraine and the region. There's just this intergenerational trauma, this nature of collective trauma sort of flowing through generations tragically, and how that relates to an even greater urgency for mental health care to be improved today. So we're doing it in a Ukrainian context, just like with the previous film, but we hope for there to be an element of universality because, of course, there's many countries at war right now, and many which suffer from intergenerational trauma, and the whole world is suffering from a mental health crisis. So we're hoping that this project can, shine some light on a better direction.
Thank you. And just one last question for about your new project. Like in The Longer You Bleed, were some like kind of experimental approaches to documentary filmmaking. Are you planning on like continuing this kind of experimental or like thinking outside of the box approach for your next film, or will it be like a more traditional documentary?
Yeah, no, definitely going to be. We have some experimental ideas which are still early stages, so we're I wouldn't say them now, but yeah, we're working with some new imaging technologies. It will be like perhaps sort of cleaner, like the original. The Longer You Bleed is more like. I mean, you can tell how like no budget and lo-fi it is, and I think that's kind of the identity of the film. But with the new project, it's taking the same kind of, well, not the same, but like the a similar sentiment towards experimentation, but obviously like on a much larger budget scale. So we have like more uh, technologies at our disposal to explore through.
Thank you.
We can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It's been really inspiring to hear more about the stories behind the film and your approach to telling them. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having me. Really appreciate it.